Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. We are at the business end of the season, but the one thing that does remain constant is I am still Baz Barrett. I am joined by Farmer Giles. Mr. Trinity himself, Will Forrest. This warm weather is not enough for Will, so he's got to take all the precautions required to keep his noggin warm. And speaking of all of the things you have to do precaution wise, what you also need to do to keep up to date with all of the latest Villa news is to check out our YouTube channel first. That's kind of more past news, but the up-to-date cutting edge news on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby you'll know by now in terms of the latest additions to our scouting team. Une is bringing some friends over from Spain. And if you don't know what we're talking about, go and check out the Twitter page, where you'll find all of the information you require, along with news, previews, poll too. I mean, we're in the build-up to the last game of the season, so there is going to be plenty going on there for you to enjoy. You can listen to our previous audio episodes if that is too much stimulation for you on our Twitter page, and you just want the dulcet tones of various Brummies, Irish people, other places in the world we have had on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google. And in that vein, we may actually potentially have a special guest star later on in the show. Actually, let's cut straight to the chase. We do have a special guest star later on in the show. So if you are there thinking, I can't spend any more time listening to these two, stick around.
Neither can we.
Yep, exactly. So we're in the same boat. But stick around for our Brighton preview later on in the show, where we will be joined by Joe from Albion Obsessed. And, I suspect he's going to be rather pleased with what's gone on at Albion this season. But you'll have to tune in to find out. Speaking of things which we are rather pleased about, takes us to potentially, well, I'll ask Mr. Trinity the question in a moment or so, but events at Anfield on Saturday afternoon, where Villa went away with a point, Liverpool won, Villa won. So straight into it, Will, is that a point gained or 2 points lost? How are you feeling after full time there?
I think if you'd have asked me in the 88th minute of the game, it's 2 points lost. If you'd have asked me prior and told me we were going to draw, it was a point gained. When you looked at our running, and when you saw our running flash up on Match of the Day or on Sky Sports News or wherever else, it was always Villa have got the hardest running. They're not going to be in contention at the end of the season. That's how it seemed to come across. Yet only a month ago, after we were battering Newcastle, it was Villa on course for a Champions League place here potentially, which obviously didn't happen. For me, I think it is a point gained. Definitely, you'd rather be in this position going into the last game where destiny is in your own hands.
Yep.
It's just a shame that we're playing Brighton and not Southampton come the weekend. I mean, I think the one good thing we've got with that, and we'll get onto it more later, is Brighton have confirmed European football now. If they win in the week against Man City, which who knows with Brighton at the moment, then they're going to be playing for something. They're going to be playing for fifth place, aren't they, rather than sixth place, which is a little bit more money. Yeah, I mean, it's all exciting. But yes, definitely, to get back to what you said, it's a point gained. It's a positive result in the end. It's also positive that Mings didn't get sent off, though if he did, then you'd have to look back and go, well, why didn't Diego Jota get sent off for kicking a Tottenham player in the head? It's a positive that Cody Gakpo's goal doesn't count because Ezri Konsa didn't mean to play the ball back to whomever set Gakpo up. And it's a positive again that Dougie Luiz is in such sparkling form that he's got another goal contribution, and Jacob Ramsey scored, and it was an exact carbon copy of the League Cup semi-final goal where Elmo crossed it in to Trezeguet against Leicester in the last minute. It's Unai's obviously doing his homework. 1-1 against Liverpool, going to Anfield, and we knew that we weren't going to lose. We knew that we weren't going to lose, that Liverpool weren't going to go and win again, because we're Aston Villa and we'll get the result we want.
Well, we'll get a result. Will's law in partial effect. And I think in terms of, you mentioned in terms of the running, and I think if you take the Newcastle game as being game one of the difficult running, in terms of teams all in the top half, apart from Wolves, local derby considerations there. The record is 3 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses, which it's not bad. I mean, it's a team in European contention record, especially against the teams in the top half of the league as we've played. And then you've got Brighton last day. Where's that going to fall into that category? We said a month ago, or I remember I saying around about a month ago on the podcast, that if you gave me the situation, last game of the season, beat Brighton, and you're in the Europa Conference League, I'd take it.
Yeah.
And that is where we are. So there's always that element in terms of human nature, being slightly greedy, in terms of if we'd held on, we'd potentially been about for 6 on the last day. But I'd say in terms of Europa Conference League, well, we've got to qualify first. Just say, in terms of, it could be a very short conversation, but in terms of, you look over at a team who was probably in a similar boat to Villa a couple of years ago, even last season, West Ham, qualified for the Europa League first, got to the semi-finals. They're in the Europa Conference League final this year. So a good run in one tournament can lead, to progression, a good run in the other, albeit they have done it the other way round. But I think from a Villa perspective, if we do make the Conference League, which is a big if at this stage, because we still have to play Brighton, not the worst thing in the world. And I think especially compared to where we were earlier on in the season, I'd say in terms of the Liverpool game, you mentioned Dougie Luiz. He was picked as a potential player to watch ahead of the game. I think in terms of that first half, evidently we had the penalty that was missed. Spoiler alert. I think the fact that the team didn't panic after that penalty miss, because you could have gone into the mindset of, oh God, that was our only chance. We kind of blew it, so it's not our day. So the fact that we pressed on and we were a better team in that period of play after we missed the penalty and got the goal, that demonstrates the commitment to the plan, really, that we had in place, in terms of not letting that have a setback. Also in terms of slightly different context, but away at Chelsea, Watkins missed an early chance. We went on and scored 10 minutes later, and we went on to win that game. I'd say in terms of the overall passage of play, the first half an hour, maybe 35, Villa were a better team. I think in terms of that run-in at the end of the first half, you mentioned Mings' challenge. I think that falls into the category of, if it had been given a red card on the field, it wouldn't have been overturned, I don't think. But because it was a yellow card on the field, it wasn't, just about not enough for VAR. It was like an orange card, I suppose, really. You could say we got lucky. Yeah.
Half and half.
Yeah,
like a rocket lolly.
Yeah, it's like, I think if it'd been a straight red, I think we would be sitting here saying it was a bit harsh. Obviously, because we're biased, but also I think in terms of, I don't think it was quite a red, but I think the red, Liverpool were in the ascendancy at the end of the first half. I think we were holding on for half time, which came, not a moment too soon for us. So we were able to regroup in the second half. And I think especially, I was watching the game with a Liverpool fan, and they said, we'll get to a stage whereby we'll just be watching the game and we'll look up at the clock and it'd be like 65, 70 on the clock. And we'll like, where's that time gone? Because not a lot's happened. And funny enough, that's exactly what happened, really. It was in terms of Liverpool had most of the ball in the second half in that opening part, but didn't really do a huge amount with it in terms of, you mentioned the goal that was disallowed. Blatant offside, 100%, no doubt.
Oh, mate, too right.
A game of a bias. I
I've
think
always liked VAR.
yeah, the script was written when they brought on Bobby Firmino. I think it was, the only question was whether it be just him who'd score or whether any of their other subs who were leaving would, miraculously come on and score even if they weren't on the bench to the goal. So yeah, minutes ago they get the goal. 10 minutes of injury time. You're like, oh Jesus, this is this isn't good for us. But yeah, we as comfortable as 10 minutes can be. I mean, yeah, there were moments that were dicey, but I think in terms of football is a game, you watch with your eyes. Stats can help illuminate, but ultimately, stats don't tell you everything. But it was interesting in terms of the game, the XG. I mean, admittedly, because we had a penalty, this does get boosted a bit, but the XG for Villa was higher than Liverpool's. Even though Liverpool had kind of 2/3 of possession, they didn't have a huge amount, in terms of shots. 5 shots on target, which isn't a battering, you'd think. I mean, that demonstrates that we were holding decent defensive positioning and that Liverpool were finding it difficult to create clear-cut chances and break through, which is, if you're going to write a definition of what a good away performance should be, that'll be it. And there were some, mentioned Louise and Watkins that, Cash came back into the team. You could have said maybe that was a big call because Young's been playing very well. Thought Cash was solid. I think in terms of we talked about it, if Kamara was fit, you'd expect him to play, and he did play, and he was decent, kind of in there. Digne played. I think that was a little bit of a surprise ahead of Moreno. But yeah, the calls in terms of personnel all came off. And even though we weren't able to get the 3 points in the end, I think it's a sign of progress that you can go to Anfield and come away thinking on another day we could have got all 3 points there rather than coming away having had another pasting. and I think that's in terms of under Emery, obviously the away form was what started off kind of Emery's actually a decent manager. He knows what he's doing, in terms of that. The only game that I can remember away from home where we got a pasting was against Man City. The rest of them, we've kind of, maybe we haven't been the best team in all of the other games, but we've been in the game. We've won most of them, got points, got some good results. We lost a few. In terms of Wolves, springs to mind as not great. But overall,
we had chances, and we had chances to score against Wolves, didn't we? When you think about the Mings effort that he put over the bar, and you're right, we're looking a lot better away from home. I mean, this weekend, if only we had somebody who knows how to take a penalty, or had that earlier in the season and not sold them in January. No, these things happen, don't they? And Watkins scored a great penalty last time we were on Merseyside. But no, sorry, you're right. Away from home, we're keeping in games. It might only be a 1-0 or a half a goal nil every now and again, but or a 1-1. No, we can play crap and we can grind out a result. And to be honest with you, I know that fans nowadays want to play free-flowing, attractive football and whatnot, and it's got to be like Manchester City or prime Barcelona. For me, if we're going to win by half a goal to nil, I couldn't care less if we have 1% possession and the ball goes in off Ollie Watkins' knee. You know what I mean? And we win 1-0. I couldn't care less if it's boring football. I just want to see the Villa winning matches. But that might not be what everybody agrees on, but that's my take.
What I'd say in terms of style, I mean, first, I wouldn't say we're a boring team. I wouldn't quite put us just on that level. I'd say methodical, maybe, kind of now in the build-up and that. But what I'd say in terms of style and, cliches of the result's the most important thing. Winning is all that counts. Where style comes into it, I would say, is the results are the most important thing. What style comes into is how much leeway you get if you're not getting the results. So if you're trying to play a nice, attacking, attractive brand of football, and you're kind of a middling team, and you're not getting the wins every week, you'll generally get a bit more leeway from the crowd to begin with than you will if you're playing what will be deemed to be negative defensive football. I mean, there's examples of teams where fans have turned quick on managers because of the style of play. Also, some other issues as well. I mean, in terms of it was different because Benitez and his history, but Everton, I think there was an element of, obviously, I do think the Liverpool factor meant there was less leeway. I don't believe even hiring Benitez, you can't speak for everybody. There's always a small minority in the other direction, but I don't believe most Everton fans, when Benitez was appointed, would have gone, I hope our team get relegated. I hope we lose every game, just so I can go, Benitez, you were never the right choice. You were terrible. What did for Benitez, I think when they started the season very well, last season now, got some results. When the results fell off a cliff, because it was a combination, the style was not seen as the Everton way, and also the history. So that came very, very quick, kind of to the end. And I think, that's where the style comes in. Because if you can see in terms of, if there's a plan, even if it's not being executed, and if it's like a plan everybody can get on board with, then you get a bit more time than if you're just playing everybody behind the ball, or you're kind of quite negative.
I'm not saying, please don't take it the wrong way in case you have, or anybody else listening. I'm not saying that our style is boring or anything. I'm just saying that if it was boring, which I don't think it is, if we were a Mourinho type of a team or a George Graham type of a team, we were getting 1-0 wins and we were getting into Europe with it in the latter stages of cups, I'd be happy. At this point, I just want to see the Villa do well. But Unai's got a great style. I mean, the play from the back, how comfortable players are. And it's interesting, I think, when you see that there were pundits who were saying, well, Villa just aren't good enough. They're not a good enough team. They won't get anybody better than Gerrard. And even if they do, they won't play any better. They'll be lucky to finish, bottom half, mid-table type of a thing. These are the same players that Steven Gerrard had, with Alex Moreno being the only exception, really, because John Duran hasn't played much. And Unai Emery has got them performing from this to off camera. Yep. That's how good it is. And you think that with our caliber of player, and we always knew that a lot of them were a lot better than people thought. John McGinn, Boubacar Kamara, Tyrone Mings. We've been massive advocates of Tyrone Mings as well. You think that if you bring in players who are actually better than them to start with as well for next season, just what Emery can do. But I do think that Unai has been listening to our podcast a little bit recently, because,
as everybody does,
well, of course, because it was our left winger who stole in to get the goal against Liverpool, Jacob Ramsey. And what a great goal it was. Ramsey's on form at the moment. I don't know what you're thinking. I mean, he's you see a lot of Villa fans who say that he's not good enough for the Villa, and that he might get replaced unless he ups his performances. I've said since last season that I think he's going to be a bit hit and miss over the next couple of years or so, because he's still only 21 years of age. It would take him some time to find his feet in the Premier League. Add to that, he's playing in a different position for Unai Emery. He's not going to be a Gareth Barry for us. Gareth Barry wasn't Gareth Barry until he was 25, 24, 25, and actually playing in midfield for a few seasons. People thought he was too slow and too hefty, and look what he turned out to be. So, I mean, Jacob Ramsey, great last couple of games, could be key come the weekend, but I'm sure we'll get into that when we chat to Joe.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, he's 21. In terms of played for a team which for most of the time he's been first, well, in the first team squad. Maybe not necessarily first choice for every game, but for last 3 seasons, really, or 2.5, he's been in that first team squad, playing most games, especially in the last couple of seasons. For most of that time, we haven't been great, or we've been inconsistent. We've been inconsistent as a team, and as you say, inevitably that is going to reflect on most of your players. I mean, in terms of a player who isn't influenced by what's going on around them, and one who can, play that 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 game regardless, they're like world class players, or they're at that level, or they're near that level. I'm not going to say Jacob Ramsey is world class, but that's not, I'm not going to beat him around the head for not being world class because, in terms of, as we've mentioned a few times before, we've been a lower half team kind of when we've been in the Premier League, well, pretty much for all the time we've been back up. So he is reflective of where Villa have been whilst he's been in the team. Is he one of those players who I look at and think, oh God, I don't know how he's in the team, should be selling him. No, I agree with you. Like in terms of, you mentioned in terms of the coaching change, evidently a lot of players have spoken out about how much more detailed Emre is in terms of his approach. That's only going to benefit a player like Ramsey in his age. I mean, when Gerrard was in charge, we were thinking, oh God, he's going to be able to replicate the driving runs kind of that Gerrard used to do in midfield. And, we remember some goals he scored under Gerrard where he did that. But, in terms of at time of recording, only one game to go, last game of the season. Number of goals Jacob Ramsey scored last season for Villa, 6. Number of goals Jacob Ramsey scored this season for Villa, 6. So different style of play, as you mentioned, he's had to do. Same results. The assists, last season 1 assist, this season 5. So they're demonstrating, he's had to adapt his game. The expectation is more than what it may have been under Gerrard, which was basically get it from the halfway line and just charge. Really, that was the main attribute. Really, I'm underselling it. He did lots of other things as well, but that was kind of the marauding Ramsey. Now there's the expectation under a tactical manager of doing more, tactical stuff, kind of on the field, and
yeah,
it does. Yeah, I agree with you in terms. I do think stick is a bit unjustified on Ramsey. If somebody came in and said 80 million for him, then yeah, I'd sell him. But that's not me thinking he's terrible and need to push him out. I do think in terms of, especially if we're a team either in Europe next season or looking to qualify for Europe if we don't make it, or making deep runs in cup competitions, you need to be building a squad that can deal with those rigors. And whether he's first choice or not, I think will depend on the summer transfer business, whether we bring in another midfielder or not. But would I want Ramsey as part of this squad? Absolutely. Unless you get stupid money. And then, well, pretty much anybody's for sale for stupid money, I'd say. But yeah, in terms of Ramsey, good finish. I like the reaction when he scored, shows he cares. I think most players care, but I think, 100 appearances for Villa. I think the sort of numbers,
not bad for a 2-year-old.
Well, exactly, and especially in terms of the potential turnover of players in the last few years. He's been kind of one of those mainstays. And you mentioned Barry, obviously broke into the Villa team at a young age, stayed for a good few seasons before being tempted elsewhere, shall we say? Who's to say Ramsey won't be, well, hopefully not tempted elsewhere, but hopefully at Villa for a few more years to come.
Yeah, I mean, and when you think about it, with Ramsey, his debut all those years ago against West Brom, 2-0 defeat, oh, and and he was shocking, or he wasn't great in that game. And now he's one of those players who you consider as a first teamer, and hopefully next season we'll be in the Europa Conference League, and it won't just be JJ, but we might even have AJ as well playing in some of the conference games for us, and seeing how he develops. Exciting times for us at the moment. But yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, that'd be certainly something to look forward to if we do make it to the Conference League. And speaking of things to look forward to, what you have been looking forward to in this episode is hearing our special, well, Will obviously, but our special guest star, Joe of Albion Obsessed, coming in to talk about the Brighton game. That moment has arrived. We are delving straight in now to talking about Brighton on Sunday, 4:30 at Villa Park. In the moment you have been waiting for, we are now joined by Joe of Albion Obsessed. We've been in a good mood talking about Liverpool, but here's a man who's probably in an even better mood than us. So, based on weekend events and the season as well. So, welcome back, Joe. Cheers for joining us. And from a Brighton perspective, must be pretty pleased with how the season's gone.
I'm just so happy that I can relax now.
No.
It's been incredible anxiety for what is it, 36 games we played. Obviously we've had the FA Cup run as well, and I was at Wembley, and that ended in the most horrible way it could possibly end. And you sort of think, are the players going to bounce back from this? And we've had a few very questionable results since then. But we've somehow managed to pull out a 1-0 win against United in the 99th minute, a 3-0 win at Arsenal chasing the title, and effectively ending their title hopes. And yeah, it's been crazy, and thank God that, yeah, as you say, a few tears there, but nope, not really. Unlucky Ben White, you really put up a fight against Karim Matoma. Well played, mate. But other than that, no, it's been absolutely unreal.
So yeah, certainly the last few weeks of Brighton, you couldn't say there's been a lack of entertainment or a lack of goals. Maybe from your perspective, some of the games perhaps going the other way, but yeah, I think that Arsenal performance in particular, and as you've alluded to with some history between the teams, what a nice way to condemn Arsenal pretty much, and to pretty much put Brighton back on that road to European qualification.
Yeah, exactly that. And it was followed up with a disappointing result away at Newcastle. But I think we sort of, the games in hand that we've had have sort of been free hits, luckily for us, that we've not needed anything from the Newcastle game, and we won't need anything from the Man City game either. I was terrified that we would choke against Southampton in the most Brighton way possible, and then have to play Man City, who, are going to play with freedom after winning the title. It maybe that plays in our favour. Who knows? I don't know. But the thing I didn't want to do is to have to go to Villa Park on the final day and get something, because that's happened before. We needed 3 points from our last 3 games in the Championship to win the title, and we didn't do it. We lost to Bristol Rovers. Bristol City, sorry. We lost to Norwich, and then Jack Grealish scored in the 90th minute to take the title away from us. And yeah, that was just giving me all sorts of haunting memories. So thank God we've done it, and we can go to your place, and hopefully it'll be a party atmosphere from both sets of fans.
We didn't mention it. We weren't going to mention that.
Well, as I said, I
it.
can mention it with a smile on my face because of what's happened, so I'm all good.
And it's like you say, there's been more highs and lows and entertainment value recently in your games than there has in a showing of Punch and Judy on Brighton Pier. You've been fantastic all season, to be honest with you. And when you look at earlier on, I was looking at where we were when Unai Emery came in, and we were still the best team in the Midlands, but we were fourth from bottom with
Default
Leicester and Forest propping us up. but you were eighth, and you've consistently been in that top half. We jokingly call him Robert the Zebra, but De Zebra has been fantastic, and it's incredibly unfair when you see rival fans say, "Well, all he's done is basically the same as what Graham Potter did." No way. When you consider that Casiodо is playing at right back against Arsenal and you're dicking them 3-0, the players and the way that they're playing, Undev in the last few games has started to score goals as well. And CISO scored a couple of rockets. And you've got these other 18, 19, 20-year-olds who are coming to the forefront. Next season has got to be incredibly exciting. And when you look at the rumoured players that you're signing, I mean, James Milner, we've always loved James Milner at the Villa. You see De Hood from Borussia Dortmund as well on a free, and you've obviously bringing in João Pedro. It's going to be exciting again for you next year, and you've got to be thinking that that's going to be another push towards the top six and breaking up the Sky monopoly.
You know, this is the first time I've spoken on a podcast since obviously yesterday. We're recording Albion Obsessed tonight, and it's honestly giving me chills and goosebumps talking about all these prospects of next season playing in a European competition. Obviously, I think we can say Europa League given the goal difference, but you know, I don't want to say that and get beat 8-0 by Man City and then 5-0 by you guys, because there's every chance that you will absolutely annihilate us at Villa Park. But hopefully it doesn't come to that. But yeah, if we're playing Europa League, it's going to be just magical. And you rightly say about the players that are coming through, the players that are coming back from loan as well. We've got a few really exciting youngsters. Mohamed Dahoud, who's about to win a Bundesliga title with Borussia Dortmund if they win their next game. So, you know, these players that are coming to little old Brighton of Albion, who not that long ago were playing in League One, is quite the story. And there's actually a documentary coming out. I don't know if you guys have seen anything about it. That they actually delayed when Graham Potter left the club. Because they didn't know how things were going to go. And this is one hell of a final chapter to add to that documentary. I've said so many times, Hollywood couldn't write the story of Brighton Hove Albion Football Club from where we've been 26 years ago, almost not existing, to now the prospect of playing, you know, Milan or Ajax or someone like that away from home and bringing them to the Amex for a Thursday night under the lights. Yeah, seriously special stuff.
I mean, sticking with Brighton, but just ever so slightly talking about the national team as well. And this would be, I know, a huge bonus for a lot of Brighton fans, because you've mentioned it before. Lewis Dunk apparently in consideration to be called up to the England squad for the next couple of games. Solly March as well has had a fantastic season, hasn't he? Scored some blinders. You know, it's exciting times for you, most definitely. Most definitely.
Yeah, and the Lewis Dunk thing, I'll believe that when I see it. Gareth Southgate hates us. So it's good that it's being reported by a decent source. The Athletic, they're normally always spot on. So yeah, that would be the icing on top of the cake for Lewis Dunk to get that England call up that we've been saying he's deserved for so long. It's been 4.5 years since his original England call up, and I'm sat here thinking, how on earth is he only on one cap? It's ridiculous. He's by far well up there with one of the best English centre backs in the Premier League in the whole world at the moment. So it's extremely deserved. You mentioned Solly. It's so gutting that he's had the end of the season that he's had. He's out for the rest of the season, and you know, won't be back until hopefully he can have a full pre-season with us. But he would have also been in with a shout for an England call-up as well. And yeah, it's gutting for him because he had that disappointment at Wembley after such an unbelievable season, as you mentioned. And, you know, we couldn't be more happy. And you if you talk about Lewis Dunk, you've also got to talk about Levi Colwill. You've also got to talk about Adam Webster, who have been equally as good when called upon. So, yeah, very promising stuff. And if Lewis gets that, it's fully deserved.
And in terms of mentioned the managerial change earlier on in the season, with Graham Potter leaving. This may be an unanswerable question, maybe a slightly unfair question, but evidently Brighton pretty much qualified for Europe now. You mentioned the improvement in, well, maybe not the improvement in the players, but kind of being brought more to national attention in terms of the performances and quality of those players. Do you think that kind of next step would have happened if Graham Potter was still in charge, or do you think that it needed the change, even though it wasn't kind of forced by Brighton? It was Chelsea coming knocking. Was that kind of the next stage required to take Brighton a bit further up, or would it have been a similar ascent under Potter, do you think?
Yeah, I think definitely if Graham had stayed, that we would have achieved around about the same thing. I think there would have been a few more struggles along the way. With Graham Potter, what we always found was like a mid-season dip. And I think we've sort of had that dip towards the end of this season. Like the loss against Everton, the loss against Forest, but they came in very different circumstances. They came because of squad fatigue. They came because of so many games in such quick succession, and because of our run in the FA Cup, it sort of hindered us a little bit because we had so many games postponed, and we've still only played 36 games, and there's a week to go. It's ridiculous. So I don't want to sound like Jurgen Klopp moaning about fixture congestion, but I think that's definitely played a part given our squad depth. And we had, I think, around about 5 or 6 under 23s on the bench against Newcastle. And Lewis Dunk was mentioning yesterday that at one point we were down to about 13 or 14 fit senior players. So when you consider that, it's been incredible. But going back to the original point, I think, for all the bad feelings we had or still maybe have towards Graham Potter, you can't discredit the work that he did and the work that he was continuing to do. If that call from Chelsea hadn't have come, we would have been more than happy for him to carry on his journey with Brighton of Albion. And I've got no doubts that he would have taken us this far. And people say, I think we mentioned it before we went on there, the thing that Roberto De Zerbi's picked up a Graham Potter squad and taken them on to better things, because of the work Graham's done. And you can't come away from the fact that Graham Potter did do incredible work to lay that foundation of going to that next step. But I don't know if you guys have listened to the High Performance podcast with Jake Humphreys and Paul Barber this morning. But Paul Barber was explaining that we always make these steps to improve, and had those foundations from Chris Hughton not been set, Graham Potter wouldn't have had the success. Had the foundations of Oscar Garcia and Gus Poyet before Chris Hughton had not been set, would we have got promoted to the Premier League? And it all comes down to Tony Bloom. Everything comes down to him. The success runs through him. So I don't necessarily think it's a sole focus of, Graham Potter would have done that. It would have been Brighton and Joe of Albion would have done that, no matter who was in charge. And just so happens that Roberto De Zerbi has just added to the quality of what we already have.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly in contention to be runner-up for manager of the season behind Unai Emery. but I'd say in terms of the off the field stuff, as you mentioned, if you get it right off the field, or if you get everybody working in the same direction, it only helps on the field. I mean, from a Villa perspective, it had been a little hit and miss, I think, to say, over the last couple of years. But from our perspective, we brought Emery in. Emery had certain conditions, which were basically, I want to bring in my people to do it my way. Villa bought into that. I think we gave him the longest contract we'd ever given a manager in our history. I think he's the highest paid as well manager, and everybody's now off the field going in the same direction. All the players talking about the methods Emery brought in off the field. We're talking, Villa Brighton for a game. Hopefully, both teams will be celebrating European football at the end of the season. So yeah, you certainly. I mean, Villa this morning, we've announced a couple more off the field appointments in the scouting team. So yeah, when it all goes in the right direction, in the same direction, behind a vision, and also, from Villa perspective under Emre, a shorter period of time than for you guys over the last couple of seasons. But when you see the improvement on the field, it makes it much easier for everybody to rally around and go, yeah, we're doing it the right way. Because just from a Brighton perspective, yep, you worked your way up, and in terms of it's a well-oiled machine. In terms of managers leaving, players leaving, hasn't really made any difference at all. I mean, in terms of your progression. But I know in terms of, obviously, as you mentioned, you've got 2 games to go left this season. So depending on what happens on Wednesday night against Man City may affect this question. But assuming everybody's fit, and everybody who realistically is going to be fit is available for Sunday at Villa Park, who do you see as Brighton's key man in that matchup?
Yeah, so I thought of a few. So obviously there's Karim Matoma, who's been absolutely electric all season. The guy has just been a revelation, as you say, about the well-oiled machine, losing Leandro Trossard and having Karim Matoma to take his place, who actually, whilst Leandro Trossard was at the club, Karim Matoma had already taken his place. And he was limited to only bench football from Roberto De Zerbi, and that's what led to his really unprofessional departure, which really annoys me, by the way. When I'm probably going off on a tangent, when players leave the club in that way. I don't know if you guys have had it with certain players, but we're having it also with Robert Sanchez, who doesn't want to be a part of the squad anymore, and hasn't been a part of the squad for 3 games now. So really annoys me. But other than that, obviously Caicedo runs the midfield incredibly well, can control the midfield on his own against 2 or 3 midfielders and won't have any problems really. And Evan Ferguson, I mean, what a revelation that boy has been. Come into the side in late December, has now scored, I think, 6 goals, and is the highest scoring teenager in the Premier League, having only played half a season and has had injury problems. So he could go on to be an unbelievable striker for us, the striker that we've been calling out for. So there's a few names for you, but I could sit here and name the whole 11. But I won't do that.
I mean, it's certainly a strong 11 for Brighton. I mean, well, evidenced by the fact you're in 6. So you got a good team. Though, kind of the potential, maybe it's a potential elephant in the room. And I think the answer will be in terms of the show will go on if this happens. But there's been rumours about McAllister potentially departing, and Liverpool have been mentioned, for example. Obviously, he's World Cup winner, a great player. I don't think that could be denied. How much of a blow would it be if the rumours do turn out to be true, McAllister, if his last game is at Villa Park, or is the next one in the ranks already primed and ready to go for Brighton next season if that does happen?
I wish I was that confident to say yes, they are ready and waiting to go, but to replace the World Cup winner is no mean feat at all. So yeah, it would be a massive blow. And last night I was sort of really upset seeing him celebrate with the squad, and sort of not upset, emotional to know that this could be, obviously I'll see him on Wednesday as well, but this could be the last time I see him celebrate at this magnitude, achieving something huge with this football club. It wouldn't really, obviously it makes sense to him because it's more money and it's going to I'll put this in inverted commas, bigger club. It wouldn't make any sense to me that he would go to Liverpool, which is what is rumoured to happen, because unless something miraculous happens, they're also going to get Europa League football. And he'll be playing in the same European competition. So why not stick with a squad that have stuck by you, have given you the platform to go on to win a World Cup with your country, and put your name in lights and say, look, this is the player you want to have in your squad, and achieve, one more season in Europe. You've achieved this, so why not play your part? And the same question would go to Caicedo. Of course, I know with Caicedo, a Champions League club may come in for him, and if he does go to a Champions League club, fair play to him. But I would love to see them just stick out one more season and see what they can achieve in Europe with us, and then go on to heavier heights if that's what they want to do. But I know that's not realistic, and I know that's coming from Brighton tinted spectacles, but we'll see what happens. But also, if McAllister does go, I have no doubt that we will replace, even if it's two or three more players to replace him, because Alexis McAllister does so many jobs all over the pitch. And I do feel like it would need to be two or three players that do replace him to come in and do those jobs.
Yeah, I mean, from a Villa perspective as well, we, if the rumours about the Villa squad are true, may also be dealing with a Argentine World Cup winner potentially departing in the summer as well for a so-called bigger club. So yeah, we may be in the same boat with that one, but potentially. But where we will be in the same boat, because we'll be in the same place Sunday afternoon, Villa Brighton at Villa Park. Depending on how results go on Wednesday against Man City, you may technically still be in a chase for fifth. With Liverpool, perhaps European qualification already sorted. How do you see the game going, or is it just very much you're hoping just for a nice, relaxing end of the season with a nice kickabout? We're not too much on the line for Brighton.
Well, Man City would have just about finished their piss up after celebrating the title, I'd imagine. And so will our players have finished their celebrations after clinching European football, whichever competition that may be. I know obviously the goal difference is huge, but I'm not going to count my chickens because we've shipped a lot of goals this season. So I wouldn't put it past Man City to tonk us. But I would see it as quite a chilled game, to be honest. It's two teams that have achieved what they wanted to achieve. I don't know what Man City would do in terms of squad, and whether that's a second fiddle team. They're still world class players. I mean, I looked at their bench yesterday against Chelsea, and it had I think that bench alone, considering it's two players less than the 11, could win the Premier League by themselves. So it's it's going to be a scary prospect. But do Man City focus on the FA Cup final and the Champions League final? Probably. You don't want to risk Erling Haaland. You don't want to risk De Bruyne, and you certainly don't want to risk Gundogan and Bernardo Silva. So we'll see how it goes. But I don't expect it to be like a thrilling game. And here we are, probably end up drawing 3-3 or something, and it would be like a 6-goal thriller. But who knows?
Well, I'm certainly hoping that they give Jack and Erling and Kevin and Edison a night off in the week and rest them for the game against Brentford, so that you can go and get the 3 points. They get told by Pep that they're all playing for their cup final place and they better go and smash Brentford. And of course, they go and do that. And then you never know. Things might work out in our favour. we could end up getting 7. That's perfect for me at the moment. And of course, Spurs go and do the Spursy thing against Leeds because Sam Allardyce,
I genuinely feel that you guys are well on course to get 7th. I don't see any issues with you guys beating us on the final day. Our players would have done their job. And whether you say, oh, yeah, but that means they'll play with more freedom, Roberto De Zerbi will be demanding a higher points finish. But I've watched a lot of you guys in the second half of the season, and you've been absolutely unreal, especially at Villa Park. And if your guys have got a job to do, Emery will get them to do that job. And our away form of late has been horrific, except for the game against Arsenal. So I can see you guys taking us to the sword, and I don't think you should have any anxiety. You are getting 7th. Don't worry.
It'd be nice, wouldn't it? I mean, if we can play anything like we did against Newcastle, and without being disrespectful, of course, because we've got a lot of admiration for yourself and Brighton. If we can play anything like we did against Newcastle, there aren't many teams in the league that can that can handle that sort of level of performance. And you've seen that from the way that you've played against certain teams as well this season. But I thought the players that you singled out as your key players, if I was going to pick one, I think the danger man for you has definitely got to be Matoma. Matty Cash has improved under Emery for us, and he'll most likely be starting at right back, but he can sometimes get twisted and turned the wrong ways by a very skillful winger. However, I think it's our Argentinian World Cup winner who's going to be key for us, because he'll be trying to waste as much time as possible, more so than normal, if we can take the lead. And of course, with the firepower that you've got, Evan Ferguson, been unreal. His battle with Konsa and Mings will be interesting come the weekend as well. So I think we'll have to rely on Emi Martinez a lot more. Was there any Villa players who you're fearful of going into the weekend?
Ollie Watkins terrifies me. The way Villa release him on counter-attacks on numerous occasions against us, who we are so susceptible to counter-attacks, it's scary. Like, I don't know if you guys watched the game yesterday, but Theo Walcott scored and it was eventually ruled offside. But it was a counter-attack from Southampton, and the way we play football is so high risk, high reward, that if we're dominating the game, which we normally do dominate a good 90% of games we play, and you guys are sat back and those spaces are opened up behind us, Lewis Dunk's never catching Ollie Watkins. And he's the player that's, the type of player that always does Brighton damage. So that's where you can exploit us. And I'm surprised you guys are looking towards your goalkeeper as your key player against us, because I think your attacking talent has more than enough to break us down and score plenty of goals.
So, I mean,
Here I am being pessimistic because we've already secured what we've secured. If we needed something, I would not be saying this.
So, in terms of, well, as long as we don't get a penalty, then I think Watkins will be all right. And I think in terms of, we'll be going on to score predictions in a moment, but I think the point we'll make, and in terms of Martinez's contribution, I think the biggest prediction is going to be whether the ball is in play for under or over 45 minutes, based on Martinez's gamesmanship, which, but very much.
I'm glad you guys admit that, because there's a lot of people that would be like, "Oh no, that never happens," But yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. I think most clubs have a player who, if they're not your team, they drive you up the absolute wall.
Yeah.
But if they're in your team, you're like, brilliant, love it. Can't get enough. Martinez is Villa's version of that. I can see. Well, Jurgen Klopp had a few words to say about him on Saturday. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if he was playing for somebody else, we'd be massively pissed off. And I think, Liverpool, Robertson is their kind of player like that. I mean, most clubs have got one. But
definitely, we had Julio and Ciso had a bit of coming together with Almiron, who they're both Paraguayan, and they were having a few words, and Ciso's been that for us. He's this arrogant little teenager who's come to the Premier League and thinks he knows best, and we love watching it. And sometimes it annoys us because it's like just focus on your game, and he wasn't overly good yesterday. But yeah, I love it when you have a player like that. But as you say, it's increasingly frustrating when it's against you.
I'm going to say, if you see Martinez rolling on the floor with 20 minutes to go, you wouldn't have needed to watch any of the game, but you'll know we're winning, basically.
I was there at the Amex. I saw it.
Yep.
Don't worry.
When we played you at the Amex as well, and it's quite, for me as a Villa fan, it's nice to see that we will do whatever we need to do to win, to get that result. And at the Amex, you really put us under the cosh, especially towards the end of that game when we'd taken the lead. And to think that we pretty much had 7 defenders at the end of the game with Martinez in goal and just leaving one player up front, and then to fight and to win as well was a massive relief. And it's quite refreshing, actually, that we've got a manager who knows what he's doing to see out games, rather than Gerrard, who would, say to Philip Coutinho, you know what to do, and he'd say, well, no, I don't, boss. What do you want me to do? And Gerrard would say hello to John McGinn for me. You know, that was about the in-depth
Well,
tactical analysis that he had.
I mean, to be fair, under Gerrard, we never had a problem seeing out games because we were usually 3 down by that point, so it didn't matter.
Good point. You guys were helped as well by VAR on that day. I remember a certain Luca Digne kick to Solly March, which resulted in a PGMOL apology, which was absolutely mad. But it's one of those things. It goes for you. And I don't know if you guys saw the offside call yesterday for Southampton. It was a blade of grass. He was a blade of grass offside, and thank God, because that would have made it 2-2. And at that point, I was almost in tears. So to go on and win 3-1 somehow from that situation. Yeah.
Somebody looked at that and went, yeah, Southampton are already down. Nobody cares.
Pretty much.
Well, speaking of things we do care about, score prediction time. In terms of the ideal number one prediction is we all qualify for Europe and have a very nice meeting in Zurich or wherever the draw is for the group stages of the Europa League and Conference League next season. But in terms of the score prediction, how do you see it going?
I mean, right. Let's hope that Leeds hurt Spurs for you. I don't think Spurs have got anything in them to go to Ellen Road on the final day when Leeds are fighting relegation to get anything. They have not got the bottle. We've seen them this season; they're awful. So let's hope that happens, and let's hope that the news filters through to the players, and we play out for a nice 2-2 draw or something like that.
No, that would be a nice way. Leeds get some early goals, and party time at Villa Park. Will you be joining in the party? Do you think the party's happening, or how do you see it going?
Mate, I'd be, if Spurs lose and it's a draw, I'd be happy with that. However, we can get into Europe, though, it's going to sound a bit pessimistic. Whether we get into Europe or not, I'm excited about next season under Unai Emery and the calibre of players that we're being linked with. I know that a lot of these websites are, made up by somebody's nan's dog's personal trainer type of thing. But when you see the rumours that Pau Torres and those types of players are being linked with us, you certainly get excited and you think, even if we don't get into Europe, we could have Pau Torres, However, I think like De Zerbi, Emery will be very demanding. He will want to put on a show for the Villa fans. Every single post-match interview, he says how important the fans are, how he wants that connection with them. And I think that we'll do just enough to get the 2-1 win, mainly because Brighton are already in Europe. I think they'll be one of the hardest oppositions that we play this season. But when we've needed to go and get a result, over the last few years, West Ham on the last day, the 10-game run in the Championship as well, and on other occasions as well, we've managed to pull something out of the bag. And that was with managers who weren't as tactically aware as Unai Emery. So apologies. I think it'll be a 2-1, but at least that way we'd both be celebrating come the final whistle anyway because of the remarkable seasons that we both have. And whoever gets manager of the year out of De Zerbi or Emery, and in many ways Eddie Howe as well, would thoroughly deserve it.
Yeah, it's a rare occasion where I actually agree with Will. So, I mean, he thinks perhaps the prediction is going to be wrong because I was going to go.
I'm glad to be here on this momentous occasion.
Yeah, because
it's not a good thing.
It's generally not. I think if Brighton needed something, I think it'd be a little different. But I think hopefully, as you say, news filters through that Leeds are winning. Everybody can relax. I'm going to go 2-1. I mean, I think even Brighton not needing a result, still going to be an opposition for us. Very good team. But I think the unscientific approach of we need it more. That's all I can kind of sum it up for. I agree. I think in terms of, I think Leeds will beat Spurs, but I do think
the counter argument I would give is that our worst performances is when we have been absolutely battered mentally. So I think it's probably quite a scary-ish prospect for you to be playing us with absolutely no pressure, because when we play Roberto De Zerbi football completely relaxed, that's when we're at our best. So if that's any positivity I can give after being unbelievably relaxed on this podcast, that's probably the Brighton positivity that I'm going to inject here.
Yeah, I think potentially for Villa, we'll be depending on how the first half hour goes. We'll be playing Brighton, but also potentially the crowd at Villa. We do have a little bit of a reputation for getting a little antsy if things aren't entirely going our way. So if Spurs take the lead and it's 0-0 or Brighton take the lead, then yeah, that could play into Brighton's hands. But worst case scenario, hopefully it never happens and we're all celebrating European football next season and we're all laughing at Spurs. Because what's better than that on a bank holiday afternoon than this? But yeah, I mean, cheers for joining us, Joe. Great to chat with you as always. Again, great season for Brighton. Hopefully you'll be getting your European tour itinerary sorted in the diary.
I've got my passport ready. I checked to see if it was still in date, and we're all good. So
good luck next season, and yeah, we'll have you back on. Both still in the Premier League. Well, from a Villa perspective, that's more impressive based on where we were earlier on in the season. But yeah, cheers for coming on, Joe. Much appreciated.
No worries, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Joe.
Joe from Albion Obsessed there, bringing us the Brighton viewpoint. And what a lovely positive chat that was. It's nice having, a situation where they're happy, we're happy, in terms of it. Very rarely comes across, that perfect synergy in football. So yeah, it was good to get his perspective. And yep, we'll be hopefully talking about European football together next season. But if you want to go to a place where you can always feel happy and positive, unless we've lost. But generally speaking, our Twitter page at Talk Trinity will give you the warm glow of knowing that you are up to date with all of the latest Villa news, views, previews. There'll be some polls or two. I mean, in terms of, we just had our score predictions ahead of the game, and we put a poll out in terms of where Villa fans think we will come. And so far, we've had about 92% have said they think Villa will come 7th. So we'll be delving down a bit more during the course of the week as to score predictions and whether the folks agree with us or not. But if you are waiting for more Twitter content, you can, in the meantime, you can go to our YouTube channel, Talk to Trinity, to catch up with all of our previous episodes, guest stars and all. Or if you're outside in the garden with the sunshine now, because it has got that, spring kind of summer feeling is here, you can go onto our audio providers, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and Google, to listen to previous audio episodes. We are also on FanHub, and we may be on some other places, but you know where to find us. And before I pass you over to Mr. Trinity for his final thoughts ahead of the last game of the season, 12 months ago, we went to Man City. A lot happened on that day, and a lot happened since then, coming up to 12 months later. I think it's fair to say a lot more confidence amongst Villa fans in terms of where the long-term future of the club is going. Hopefully we do get Europe on Sunday, but even if fate cruelly conspires against us, it is onwards and upwards for Villa. I'm that excited. I can't even get my words out. I'm that excited about what is going to happen. But if you go in the game, enjoy the game. At time recording, not entirely sure if it's going to be on Sky or not, but I'm sure you'll find a way to keep up to date with what's going on. And don't forget to laugh at Spurs. Bye from me for now. Thanks for listening, watching, subscribing, retweeting, all the other things you've been doing. We'll be back next week to tell you what happened. And we will have a whole summer of entertainment. But stay tuned for more details of that over the next couple of weeks. But from me, bye for now.
But I'm going to try and get all of my words out. I know that Baz hasn't been able to because of all of the positivity on the show, but not just because of that, because he's excited that down the road tonight, tomorrow night, and last night, Harry Styles was performing in Coventry. And whilst we're talking about Harry Styles, it's nice to know that the Villa are no longer falling, that it's not the same as it was, and what Mr. Unai Emery is doing, getting the Villa back up the top of the league, is very much a sign of the times. Believe me, we're really, really looking forward to Sunday. It's been a fantastic season, and things can only get better for us with Unai in charge and with all of the other structures that we've got in and around the place. It's a great time to be a Villa fan. And who knows, next year we might even be challenging for the Premier League title if you look at the form that we've been under ever since he's come along, and also all the new signings that we're meant to be getting. But as Baz says, we've got one more review to do before then, and we've got a whole summer of fun, guests, and Villa to talk about as well. So, cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. He's Villa till he dies. He's no longer Arsenal because they bottled it. I'm Villa till I die. Cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. Up the Villa.